The noise of the two immediately attracted Jacob's attention. He looked at his mother and was speechless in surprise. After a while, he asked Charlie, "Good son-in-law, is that my mother? Am I wrong?" Charlie smiled slightly. "Dad, you are right, it is indeed her." Jacob exclaimed. How does she wear the staff vest? Did she come here to work?" Charlie nodded. "It looks like this," Jacob said in surprise. "This is not right. Didn't Ragnar inject capital into the Wilson family? He also bought them a first-grade Thompson villa. It stands to reason that their family should be living well now." Jacob didn't know what happened in the past 2 days. He didn't even know that Elaine was kidnapped by his own elder brother and nephew, not to mention that Ragnar had already given up a considerable part of his family assets and became a dog under Orville. Therefore, it is naturally not clear that the situation of Mrs. Wilson and her family has changed drastically in these 2 days. Charlie said at this time, "I heard that it seems that Ragnar has withdrawn his capital." "Withdrawn capital?" Jacob exclaimed. "This Ragnar is too unreliable. He said that he would withdraw his investment? Then why did he divest? I believe that with his assets, he doesn't care about the investment in the Wilson Group, it is just some money." Charlie shrugged and said with a smile, "We don't know this." As they were talking, they saw Gina poking the old lady's ankle a few times with the mop, and said in disgust, "You bad old lady, get out of the way quickly, it affects my mopping." Old Mrs. Wilson choked and said, "Gina, the job arranged by the supermarket leader is here to help customers pull plastic bags. If I don't do it well, I will be fired. I beg you, don't have trouble with me." Gina snorted coldly. "I originally respected you very much, but you should know what you did this yourself. This is called self-inflict," as she said. Gina sneered and gritted her teeth. "I tell you, a dead old woman, don't think I am a rural old lady with no culture, but my bones are very hard. And I especially don't like those who look down on me. It doesn't matter if you beat me, but you shouldn't insult me." After finishing speaking, she put away the mop, and when she passed by Mrs. Wilson, she deliberately bumped her and slammed her into the shelf next to her, making her grin in pain. However, after Gina hit her, she didn't continue to pester her, and took the mop to other places to mop the floor. The old lady Wilson stood still. The more she thought about it, the more she was wronged. She thought to herself with grief and anger in her heart, "I have been in the Wilson family for so many years, when have I been bullied like this? It is really unreasonable. What's even more unacceptable is that I am so old now that I have to come out to do this kind of undignified temporary worker. For these years, I have been in Wilson's house, but I haven't even washed a teacup myself. Now, I have to pull plastic bags for various customers in the supermarket to save their time. But, what else can I do if I don't do it? I don't do it. I don't even have a chance to fill my stomach. I work here as a part-time worker, and at least get a pay of 100 yuan a day, and I can manage a meal at noon. If I don't do it, neither Horia nor Gina will give me a bite of food. Will I starve to death by then?" Thinking of this, Mrs. Wilson felt so aggrieved that she stood by the shelf, sobbing. Seeing this, Jacob felt a little bit unbearable in his heart, and said to Charlie, "Charlie, I think your grandma is really pitiful too. She will definitely come to work in such a place as a last resort." Charlie asked him, "Dad, do you have any plans?" Charlie didn't know what Jacob's mood was at this time, but saw that he was somewhat unbearable, so he thought he might want to help the old lady. At this time, he saw Jacob and said, seeing his mother living such a life and doing such a job with his own eyes, he, as a son, must be very sad, and it is not easy to stand by. Speaking of this, Jacob suddenly changed his conversation, covered his eyes, and said, "But I didn't see anything. It was an illusion just now." After speaking, he quickly turned around and said to Charlie, "Good son-in-law, let's go buy some fish, shrimp, meat and eggs first. As for the vegetables, we should buy them from a supermarket. What do you think?" Charlie didn't know what he meant, and immediately said with a smile, "Yes, Dad, I think the same as you. The food in this supermarket is really not very fresh. See if there are any larger Boston lobsters, and if so, buy a few homes." Jacob smiled, pointed his finger at Charlie, and exclaimed, "You still know me. Come, let's buy lobster." Although Jacob felt more or less sympathetic to his mother's experience. However, he is not a fool. He had already seen clearly the face of the old lady for so many years. When he dared to go out with family, there was really no kindness at all, and even less thought of blood. When she pitted his daughter Claire, the start was just as cruel. Later, the Wilson family failed. In order to be able to live in his Thompson first-class villa, she also deliberately did a lot of disgusting things. Jacob was tired of these faces. Therefore, he also hopes that reality can teach Mrs. Wilson a profound lesson. Before Mrs. Wilson repented completely, he did not intend to give her any help. Jacob and his son-in-law bought a lot of things, but they didn't go back to the vegetable area to purchase. After a cart full of various ingredients, the two went to the cashier with the cart to check out. In the cash register area at this time, a long line was lined up in front of every cash register. Charlie and Jacob lined up for more than 20 minutes before they finally reached one of the cash registers. Seeing that it was his turn to check out, Jacob hurriedly walked to the shopping cart and said to Charlie, "Good son-in-law, you will scan the code with the cashier at the back, and I will put the bag in front." Charlie nodded. Jacob walked into the cashier aisle first, and before Charlie picked up the goods, he said to the cashier, "Come on, 4 plastic bags, the largest one." The cashier nodded and said, 5 cents a big bag. After speaking, he lowered his head and took out 4 large plastic bags from the drawer beside him and handed them to Jacob. Jacob took the plastic bag, looked up subconsciously, and immediately exclaimed, "Oh, sister-in-law? Why are you here, huh? It's you." In front of the cashier, Horia, who was wearing a supermarket employee's vest, looked at Jacob and was equally shocked. She never dreamed that when she was forced to be helpless, run out to work as a temporary worker, and become a cashier, she would run into Jacob. Look at the young man who went out of the shopping cart on the other side. Isn't he the trash son-in-law of the Wilson family, Charlie? When Horia saw that Charlie took out a thick plastic bag containing several top-quality large lobsters, she thought sourly in her heart, "I've been hungry for a day and night, and I have stood here hungry all morning. I haven't waited for lunch at the supermarket. They've done it, and they bought a big bag of lobsters of this size. The two families who also live in Thompson, how can the difference in living standards be so big?"